Alright, I'm back. Finishing up infants. As far as the reflexes go, we're going to talk about the fact that reflexes provide an insight into their mental life. It's the best we have with trying to figure out what is going on in their brains. So we look at their gaze duration related to visual perception. So if they're staring at certain things longer than other things, there's this indication in our minds, and hopefully that they're thinking about those objects. So if they see this pen and it's new and they stare at it longer than perhaps they've been staring at, your hand, maybe something's going on. Like, what is that? That's what we're trying to, or that's what we hope to deduce or figure from what they're doing. Head turning, so if they orient their head towards sounds. And then, of course, sucking, reaching, kicking can be used to measure interest. And that's it. All right, we have pretty much figured out that it's not, infant perception is not just a blow or buzz. We do know in the first week they will recognize their mother's smell. Okay, that's very strong and powerful. Will show preference for novel stimuli. In other words, new. Something's new, they tend to want to check that out before going back to what they already know. They do prefer human voices and faces. They have been shown, for instance, this face versus this face, and of course, the two eyes and one mouth face is something that infants can recognize because they see that all the time, whereas one eye, I don't know, two mouths, upside down version, they don't prefer that. They don't want to look at that. They want to look at the other one. And of course, the smell and sound of their mother is preferred. Of course, there's that very strong bond that goes on right after birth. Let's see. Trying to liven it up here. Infants explore their environment in whatever way their physical development permits. Okay, for a long time they can't really do anything. They don't have control over their limbs. And they're just sort of lying there a lot. Okay, at 2 to 3 months they will grasp objects and put them in their mouth to explore. So if you give them, a little. Sometimes people give them balls, or it could be even, a doll. They'll just take it and they just naturally oh, this is this, and then and they're gonna try to figure out what is this, can I eat it? That's all they got. They don't have any other way, and their fingers aren't dexterous enough to be very manipulative, so it's sort of like grasp, put in mouth. At 3 to 4 months they will manipulate the object, examine it visually, selectively attend to novel objects or events. So now they're going to be able to sort of look at it. Not saying they won't put it in their mouth, but they'll be able to manipulate it better, move it around, touch it. And that's where you get into all those little baby toys, I guess, that, one crinkly sounds is one thing, and then a super soft, fuzzy side of an object, and sometimes a more rough, rubbery side. They just love touching all that stuff and figuring out all there is to about that. And it's about 9 months when they really, roughly, when they really get mobile as far as crawling goes for the first time, where if you take your eye off of them, you can have a problem. So that's where all the parents get very, very nervous, and I know we did. We put all those little hooks inside the doors for all of our cabinets in the kitchen and the bathroom and everything, so that nobody can open it. We still have some of them on there, as a matter of fact. I probably should take them off. But nobody wants to walk into the kitchen and see their baby, having crawled up to the sink, underneath the sink, and, somehow gotten into some kind of chemical cleaner and drinking it because they think it's a liquid, so it's good. And that has happened, and that's a scary thing. So keep that in mind when you have children. All right, maturation is a biological growth process that enable orderly changes in behavior. Okay, so that's maturation. Okay, basically you're getting older. You can't really stop that. It's relatively uninfluenced by experience. So in other words, when you're supposed to grow and when you're supposed to get taller or heavier or you're your mind is going to be able to grasp more abstract concepts. Again, trying to teach a 4-year-old calculus probably is not going to work, but there will be a point at which everybody reaches a mental state where they're capable of learning abstract concepts. You know, not everybody's going to, want to do it or have the best mind for it, but we definitely understand abstract concepts when we start to enter the late teens, and definitely by the 20s, where not everything has to be spelled out. All right, does set the course for development while experience adjusts it. So, your mind develops, and maybe you start to say, well, hey, I can do some of this math, and you start messing with it, and then your experience shows you that maybe, math is not your favorite thing, or math is something that is tedious to you, or whatever, and so your experience will adjust it. Okay, we don't all go into fields or pursue interests that we can do. We pursue ones that more or less we want to do. All right, and here's sort of a graphic of what you might see as far as the complexity of a mind at birth, 3 months, and 15 months. So it's sort of you could think of it as the World Wide Web, or a web of neurons. Here it's relatively just very, very minor. So that's obviously the kids can't control their arms, and their legs are moving, and their heads jerking around. That 3 months, it's getting smoother. They're able to move more fluidly. And then, of course, at 15 months, they're probably crawling by this point, so they're able to coordinate movements. Left arm, and all that stuff takes time for the brain to figure out how to do it, and the more that a human being does, the more dense this network becomes in the brain. It's the analogy of it being a muscle is probably very, very close to accurate. The more you use it, the more dense it becomes, the more you can use it to do more things. Okay. And you also take in the world by a schema, a concept or framework that organizes and interprets information. That's a popular idea that when we're very young, we start to first figure out a schema for a dog, for instance, might be a 4-legged animal. When a baby first learns that, they don't know everything about what makes a dog a dog. They just see 4-legged animals, so they might look at the cat and call it the dog, or maybe even a hamster, or if they see a deer outside, dog. They're working on their schema, and when mom and dad say, no, that's not a dog, it's a deer, they have to start to adjust their schemas and come up with new schemas to incorporate new information into their world, so that they can figure all that stuff out. All right, cognition is just simply mental activities associated with thinking, knowing, and remembering. That is your cognitive mind. Okay, it is what is developing over the course of your lifetime, from the time you're conceived. Okay, mental activities. Now we're going to talk about Piaget, and that's how you pronounce it. It's Piaget, not Piaget. So I don't want you to sound like you don't know when you're talking to people. But Piaget's theory of cognitive development, he is one of the 800-pound gorillas in the world of psychology. He has had a tremendous, I don't know what the word is, influence, I'm sorry, I couldn't get it out of my mouth, tremendous influence on the world of developmental psychology. A lot of his theories are still very much supported today, and new theories branch off of it. So let's get started. Driving force, okay, I already told you that. Make sense of our world. Basically, we're constantly trying to figure out how to make sense of our world. He says children experience spurts of change followed by greater stability as they move from one developmental plateau to the next. Big stage guy, believed in stages. 4 big ones we're going to talk about. Big stage guy. All right. He insists infants can think, and that's why I have that highlighted in that neon green. So he's saying, like, for instance, in one of his studies he has, after sucking on one of these, babies looked longer at the nipple that they had felt in their mouth. They could tell which one was in their mouth, and so they would look at it longer. And he says they're thinking. Okay, again, it's a theory. We don't know for sure, but that's what his point is. Next slide is, this is sort of all of it summed up, and then the slides that follow will be sort of each little stage that is more reiterated, or I say it a little bit differently, but that's okay. I'm kind of going over twice here. So this chart, know it, okay? Really know this well, okay? So you have, first, birth to nearly 2 years. He calls it the sensory motor stage. It says children experience the world through senses and actions, looking, touching, mouthing, okay? It's all senses, sensory motor. There are some key phenomena that go on at this stage. One is object permanence and stranger anxiety. I don't want to get into those now. I'll come back to them. But then 2 to 6 years, you enter what's called the pre-operational stage, according to Piaget. They representing things with words and images, but lacking logical reasoning. This is where I remember my son he started to figure out that, he wanted stuff in the back, in the kitchen, and everything that was a fruit was a berry, and he'd always go, berries, berries, and he'd always point at the refrigerator. And at first it was great, it was strawberries, and we knew that. And then again, his schema for it took him a while to understand that not everything is called berries, and I can't differentiate between strawberries, blueberries, or whatever else he wants, or an apple or whatever. He would just get so angry, and he would say berries, and I would turn to the fridge, and I'd open the door, and I'd grab the strawberries, and I'd be bringing them out to him, and he'd be like, berries, and I'd be like, okay, put those back, and then I'd grab blueberries, berries, and I'd go through this whole thing, and you're just like, just tell me what you want, please, and they can't really speak that well yet, and it's a fun but frustrating stage, and a lot of good stories come out of that stage, so be wary. And here we talk about pretend play, egocentrism, and language development. Again, I'll come back to that. And then about 7 to 11 years, and that's where my boys are now. It's called the concrete operational, thinking logically about concrete events. They grasp concrete analogies and performing arithmetical operations. So, what does concrete mean? Concrete, of course, we know, is a hard substance. Boom, you can touch it. I'm hitting this desk. Boom, you can touch it, hit it. It's solid, it's there. So concrete means when it's there, they get it. So they can understand that, probably throwing a football at somebody's face is not a good idea because, let's say the football is fairly hard and it could hurt somebody, and they'll understand that's concrete. They can touch the football and realize, man, I wouldn't want to get hit in the face with that. Okay, they can figure that out. Or if they have been playing and missed a catch and it hit them in the face, they can really identify with that. So that's concrete. And then you have conservation and mathematical transformations occur in this stage. Again, I'll talk about that later. And then about 12 to adulthood. Okay, that's where you guys are, where I am. It's called formal operational. We develop our abstract reasoning. Okay, abstract logic, potential for moral reasoning, which we will also talk about. Formal or abstract reasoning is basically, when you first start out, when you think about it, algebra, it's abstract. It's a simpler abstraction. It's not super complicated. I don't think, but maybe some of you do. But you're just replacing for X or for Y, and it's like it doesn't really exist, and the whole thing is not really something you get done and say the answer is 6, and then you like have 6 of something. You don't. It's all on paper. It's all abstract. So important to understand that as you develop that abstract reasoning, you can really get into some thinking about your thinking, and this is where you get into philosophy, and you get in, you like again calculus, and when you're talking about theoretical physics, They're not actually doing any of this stuff. No one has ever flown out to space and for sure figured out all these theories that go on in physics, but they can postulate because of their ability to be abstract. I'm going to stop there and come back to restarting Piaget's stages.